Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to All Things Division 3 Soccer with Simple Coach. I am Simple Coach. It is Friday the 5th of September. Everyone in Division 3 has pretty much played the first game, at least. Some have played a couple. And we're obviously heading into the weekend tonight, tomorrow, Sunday with some really good matches on the docket. But I did want to make a quick video just to sort of give you my impressions of what I'm seeing because, yeah, I don't know. I get that it's early, and I totally understand, that it's just really hard to tell what teams are what, how they're going to play, especially when they're figuring things out. You forget, not that you forget, but you realize that every year players change. They always lose very impactful players. They add new ones, rookies. And in Division 3, where it's just hard to track players and programs and who's who and who's had a better recruiting year than some others, but as I do, I've been watching as many games as I can, and it's like binge watching multiple games at once. I will say that there's something going on with my Flow Sports, so there's a number of games that I wanted to watch that I haven't. So take that into account when I, with some of my thoughts. You can. What's interesting is I followed this my fourth year, fifth year, I can't even remember. You have a sense as programs, right? You kind of know what programs are going to do well, what aren't. It's just almost like the top 20, top 25. I'll say the top 50. You can kind of divine who's going to perform, who's, at their relative level. And there's always some shockers there, at the start of the season. And I was warned, I'll just say, my first impressions of the season, I was warned about one team. Not warned in a bad way, but hey, keep an eye out that they are for real. And I have not watched them play, but I will. So the team I'm referring to is Edgewood College out of Madison, Wisconsin, and that they're a team to watch. They beat John Carroll at Don Shula Stadium, and then they traveled down the road and tied Kenyon 1-1 at Mavic Field. These are surprise results, again, which is, I'll go into it. Let me just go through this really quick. Head coach Tim Bruner joined in 2023. In 2022, Edgewood went 1-15-1. They won one game, lost 15, and they tied one. In 2023, they went 8-9-3. And then in 2024, they went 17-2-2. They were in the conference tournament semifinals where they lost to Aurora 1-0. So quite it's noticeable, right? When you tie John Carroll, or when you beat John Carroll and then you tie Kenyon, two teams, programs where I have, again, and they could be unrealistic, totally understand. I could have unrealistic expectations as to what John Carroll and Kenyon are going to do. All right, I expect them. This would be a game where, again, not having watched Edgewood, so I apologize. Right, like I would have expected John Carroll and Kenyon to sort of wrap that up. So, one team I do think is for real. Vassar. Yeah. I think if I'm going to say who's impressed, I'm going to put that in air quotes because I wouldn't say that that's what they have. I do see them actually playing in a way where it's impresses me. So They opened the season defeating Western Connecticut, which is a good, solid victory, 5-2. And then they beat NYU 3-2. Now, to me, the big test, right, is going to come this weekend. So tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday, whenever games are played. There's a lot of sort of key matchups that I'll be looking to as sort of bellwethers, right? So are they for real? Is Vassar for real? They're playing Saturday at Cortland, who's also 2-0, who looks pretty real to me as well. So, but I will say in general, what I said earlier about these teams where I have these expectations for some reason that they should be better than what they are, I've kind of been more on the disappointed side, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I kind of expected better. I've expected them to play better soccer. I'm not sure what that expectation actually is, right? Like, if they played great soccer, would it be great enough for me? I don't know. I'd like to think that I look at the game and I try to be devoid of any opinions about what is good, what is bad, and I just try to let their game speak to itself. But I'll to name a few that I thought should maybe be better than because again, for a host of reasons, Franklin and Marshall. Franklin and Marshall just doesn't look the same this year. Looks down. There's been a lot of change there, so that could be it. One that does surprise me that I don't understand, again, because they do have, I think, the leading scorer back. And I know EJ was never convinced by them, but Dickinson had a banger of a year last year. I would have expected them to continue, and I'm not sure they have. Another one I even think I had them have them in the top 20 or 25, Pacific Lutheran. Just not putting it together. I think they've tied both games or lost one. I can't remember. I don't have it in my notes. Another one where I just kind of looked, I have expected better, but they looked really ineffectual, was Washington and Lee. Now, having said that about Washington and Lee, they started off slow last year and then really picked it up and sort of hit their form, especially as they marched through the ODAC and then went to the NCAAs. But I don't know. It just looks different to me. And then the last one where I'm like really just kind of like, what is going on? And they suffered a loss to a team, Cortland, that, okay, you can sort of say, you know what, maybe that's a Cortland thing because Cortland's that good. But then they lost to another college, Nazareth, and I'm like, I'm not too sure. And I'm talking about Rochester. The women's team still has me, blocked on Exeter. But the men's team, they lost to Cortland 4-0, followed up by a loss to Nazareth 4-1. I have to say, it is going to be a very long season if they continue to concede 4 goals a game. Goalkeeping's got to be particularly difficult in that situation. Okay. Lastly, I just want to touch upon the NESCAC because, again, they are, to me, it's the blue bloods of the Division III soccer right now. The quality that came out of the NESCAC last year and into the tournament speaks volumes, right? Like, let's probably the best teams. Well, they won the national championship and made it to the and lost in the national championship. But these are teams that really, even on the, some teams are not as proficient in league, but once they step out of league, they just bang on everybody. So, but I will say again, I don't know. I was surprised. I expected more out of Kahn and Williams. And, they stumbled out of the gate and tied their first games at home. Connecticut ended up 0-0 against Hartford. They took 21 shots. 21. And Hartford, 0. It's a shocking statistic, but watching the game, I'm like, I always say when I coach my local high school, I always say there's one of the questions you always ask is how easy or difficult is it to get in front of goal for a meaningful chance? And in spite of them taking 21 shots, I wonder how easy it was for them to get in front of goal, right? Some of the shots I saw were coming from 35, 40 yards out, just like blind hope I'm going to tee it up. I just don't know. Williams, they tied Wheaton 1-1. I thought Williams had the better of the play. They were home. I thought Wheaton had a stretch where they looked really, really solid, but Williams couldn't break them down. But again, I think it's the NESCAC, so I expect them to dispatch their opponents. And that was not necessarily the case. And then lastly, and this will be the last of it, and I'll let you go. I got a bunch of things I'm trying to do. I'll talk about it, but I didn't find Amherst particularly impressive against Suffolk. I sort of committed this year to saying things the way I think a little bit more and being less diplomatic, but I thought Amherst was up to its usual antics. That makes watching them painful. All right, I think they destroy the game, and I think the sideline nonsense is just too much at times. Having said that, and while I expect Amherst to really be a Route 1 team, get it up top, and sort of keep the pressure on the opponent's end of the field, I expect them to look better against, and I mean this respectfully, to lesser teams. This is the national champion we're speaking of. And so I expect more out of them. And I apologize, Monmouth Nation, including my niece, but it has to be said, right? Like, I think it's fair to expect better out of a national champion. So, with that, those were just some quick notes. I will have more. I'm going to try to do this regularly, maybe. I will say I do have top 25 I'm going to work on, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm going to do one this week because I'm not sure who is the number one program in the country. And I'm not going to do hey, you have the better record or what have you. Like, I'd like to see something. Like, if you asked me, if you said, hey, put together your top 25 right now, I would say there is no top 5 team. I haven't seen a top 5 team. We can start talking about, 6th, 7th through the 25th. But top 5, I couldn't tell you who the top 5 are. I haven't seen it on the field, so I'm sure that's going to get me in trouble. But, so, I'm not sure I'm going to do one this week, men's top 25. I do have a women's top 25 that I started in preseason that I'm going to try to get published. Hopefully this weekend. Things have been a little hectic, so I'm going to be recording today. I think later today, a review of some of the picks from EJ's weekly pool and see what the Hive consensus tends to be for some of the games that we outlined in the games of the week, week 2, which should be, and is actually always interesting because then I realize how wrong I am. And then I am in the finishing touches. I am hoping to have a very interesting conversation with the commissioner of one of the conferences, Division III conferences. So she'll be a repeat guest, if that is a clue. And I'm hoping that we're going to do that Monday, but just waiting to confirm. So mostly going to talk about sort of the impact of all the things in the NCAA and where she sees it impacting Division III, and in particular her conference and the teams and whatnot. And then lastly, I mentioned my Flow Sports. I hope to have that resolved here shortly so that I can watch more games. I would ask, maybe this is my big ask, this is my big action item. Perhaps you esteemed watcher, subscriber, perhaps you can enlighten me and point me in a direction of some teams that have impressed you. And so that I can maybe whittle down on some teams to find teams that might look impressive, and maybe jumpstart the 2025 a little bit more than sort of where it is in my mind. So with that, I am going to let you go. Thanks for everything. Appreciate you tuning in, watching. By all means, again, who do you think's impressive so far this year? And we will speak soon, I hope. Later today, you'll see, like I said, the weekly pool Hive, and next week, let's hope the commissioner gets on board. So, all right, peace out. Did I just say peace out again? Like, what is that? Oof.